What's up guys, in this video I'm going to show you an awesome two-handed melee double strike Vaal Cyclone build, and this build took me to endgame maps and it is probably the most fun I've had in Path of Exile playing this build ever. So I hope you guys enjoyed as well. Thank you for watching. What's up guys, Lifting Nerd Bro here. Today I want to share with you one of my absolute favorite builds, the Le Beau two-handed double strike Vaal Cyclone build. Not only is this build very strong, it's also so much fun to play as well. And this build is viable for both beginners and veterans alike, as well as both softcore and hardcore league players. I will give you this warning though, if you're a new player wanting to try out this build, then you might want to play this in a softcore league. Being able to read the map and understand what kind of monsters you're fighting against is important for this build, as we're using Vaal Cyclone. If you are a seasoned player or simply feel confident in your own abilities, then there's no reason to not play this in hardcore. At least that's what I did. So let me give you a little introduction. This character was actually made for the 2-week race league, which meant I really didn't have any currency to invest into this character in that short amount of time. But I still managed to read endgame maps for less than 30 Chaos Orbs. Those 30 Chaos Orbs were obtained by using the Chaos recipe and by trading. I should however note that I was fairly lucky with the price I gave for my sword. The defensive powers of this character lies in its use of iron reflexes that converts all evasion rating into armor, along with having 7 endurance charges up most of the time and cleverly using a granite and resistance flask. To further utilize the power of iron reflexes, we're using the Grace Aura, which will convert the flat evasion bonus to armor. Additionally, this build ends up having 170% increased total maximum life and 1% increased extra maximum fire resistance. All this leaves us with a very high amount of armor and lots of HP, thus making us very tanky. You know the cliche sentence everyone says, the best defense is a great offense. Well, for this character, that is partly true. This build heavily relies on a shit ton of attack speed along with the skill gem life gain on hit. This in combination with Vaal Cyclone and double strike leaves us able to land so many quick hits that we're able to gain more than enough life back to sustain our HP when attacking. For that same reason, reflect damage is never a problem as well. Since life gain on hit is part of a survival mechanism, we're also incorporating Resolute Technique, and this will make sure that we never miss a hit, and that indirectly increases the power of the life gain on hit skill gem. So, let me show you the skill gem we use for this character. For damage, our main attacks are Double Strike and Vaal Cyclone. At the moment I have both my sword and armor 5 linked, and that is a very nice bonus, but it isn't required. Not until late game at least. If you can, getting a 6 link for your double strike and adding in the melee physical skill gem will greatly increase your damage as well. Double strike is linked with melee splash, life gain on hit, multi-strike and blood magic. With this setup, double strike with hatred activated currently does close to 13,000 DPS. Adding in melee physical damage should take you to around 20,000 DPS. For single target boss encounters, you can simply switch out the melee splash gem as seen here for melee physical, which of course will make you do a lot more damage. For Vaal Cyclone we're using blood magic, melee physical damage, increased duration and life gain on hit. Increased duration may sound a little weird to you, but it simply makes us able to cyclone for a longer duration. Before Forsaken Masters was released, multi-strike could be used with this skill gem. That does no longer work unfortunately, and that is why you don't see it for this setup. The most important stat for these two offensive skills, besides damage of course, is attack speed. As it will not only make us deal more damage, it will also allow us to hit the mobs with a much higher frequency, and thus leaving us able to gain a ton of life back with our life gain on hit skill gem, as mentioned earlier. This is especially important for Vaal Cyclone, as it can be a little dangerous in there sometimes if you aren't generating enough life to sustain yourself. To further improve our defenses, we're using Cast when damage taken linked with Enduring Cry, Molten Shell and Enfeebled. For farming level 74 and 75 maps, I found that I prefer my cast when damage taken setup to be leveled as such. Cast when damage taken level 9, Enduring Cry level 10, Molten Shell level 12, and Enfeeble level 10. When farming lower level content, you should start out with having a lower level cast when damage taking setup, otherwise it will proc too inconsistently. The reason for that is of course that the mobs in the lower level areas deals less damage. For auras we're running Hatred and Grace. Since we are a physical damage based character, Hatred greatly increases our damage and Grace in combination with Iron Reflexes greatly boosts our armor. You can ignore the Vitality aura. I am simply leveling it and not using it for the time being. For extra mobility we are using Leap Slam linked with faster attacks and blood magic. The really cool thing about being sword based is that you're able to leap slam really fast, and with this build you'll often find yourself leap slamming happily into the face of the monsters and then even more happily leap slamming away again when they've been killed, of course. For this build, Leap Slam actually deals a lot of damage as well, so that is an added bonus. Lastly, I'm using Smoke Mine to safely open strongboxes. What a ninja. So, let me show you the skill tree and explain how I leveled this character. The first thing I did was to pick up the 8% increased attack speed skill node. Not only is it a pretty awesome skill node long term, it will also make your leveling process feel much nicer. I then picked up these life and evasion skill nodes and went into finesse, and then picked up Heart of the Oak. Since we're using Unwavering Stance in this build, you may argue that we're not using this skill node to its full potential. However, the 1% increased life regen and 8% increased life is just too good to pass up on for me. It also makes leveling a lot nicer because of the life regen. Anyway, from here on I picked up the 3 attack and movement speed skill nodes and then went down into Thick Skin. From here on I started to move towards and picked up Iron Reflexes. I then went and picked up Executioner and continued up through the Duelist starting area, getting the life and increased melee damage skill nodes. Before leaving this area, I also picked up Acceleration and Leather and Steel. And I'm still debating whether or not I want Leather and Steel, but for now I choose to use it. Lastly, we'll be picking up the 3 life nodes here and Golem's Blood. From this point on, we're going to start moving towards Resolute Technique. And since we're going to utilize additional endurance charges and want to pick up these sword nodes later on as well, we're going to move through this section. On our way to Resolute Technique, we will pick up Destroyer and use the increased damage node here to get it. The 2% increased attack speed from this node really isn't worth it, so we skip that. If you by this point in time are feeling a little squishy, then you can pick up these life nodes. Otherwise, just continue towards Resolute Technique, as we will get these life nodes later on anyway. Since we want both Barbarism and Blade of Renown, we're going to take this path to reach Resolute Technique. But on our way we will first grab some more damage by picking up Butchery. Now, let's pick up Resolute Technique. And if you haven't already by this time, you should now make the transition into using a two-handed sword. It is by this time the build will really start to take off, as we can now pick up the sword attack speed and damage nodes, and these make a big difference. The first notable we're going to pick up is Blade Master. Secondly, we're going to pick up Wrecking Ball. Thirdly, we'll take Razor's Edge and getting that nice boost to life as well. And at this point I would recommend picking up the Herbalism life nodes over here, and then Unwavering Stance. Unwavering Stance is very important for our build, as it will prevent us from getting interrupted when we're using our Vaal Cyclone. Getting interrupted when doing that can be really dangerous, as it will leave you with a ton of unexpected alive mobs that are now ready to attack you. Luckily, our Double Strike will still provide a ton of life gain per hit and should be able to take down these mobs easily, but still, you want to have Unwavering Stance. If you by this time have your cast when damage taking set up ready, and you probably should, picking up the extra endurance charge is a good idea as well, so we're gonna do that. We can now pick up these 2 melee damage nodes and Born to Fight, and from this point on I also picked up by the Blade, Blade of Renown and Barbarism. The last 7 points I would use to increase our damage by putting them into Deadly Dilettante and picking up the attack speed nodes to get there, and then finally Reckless Abandon. Oh, and you will probably need this 30 intellect skill node here as well. If you can get it on your gear, that is of course a better solution, but just pick it up whenever you need it. So that's it for the skill tree, guys. Now let's talk about how to best level this character. For leveling, I highly recommend using Spectral Throw with the two-handed weapon until you at least get yourself a multi-strike and melee splash gem for your double strike. In practice, Spectral Throw is probably going to be stronger and more efficient all the way up until level 50 or so, but it's been a while since I've leveled this character, so I can't really remember. But the take-home message here is that you should, if you want to, use Spectral Throw until your double strike becomes more powerful and efficient. And it will probably need both a multi-strike, melee splash and life gain on hit to be that. As you saw from the skill tree, we end up picking the sword attack speed and damage nodes in the mid to start late game. It is from that point on the build really starts to get strong. Since I was playing in hardcore with this character, I didn't start to use Vaal Cyclone until about level 60, as I wanted to make sure that I wouldn't kill myself. You can of course use this skill earlier, but just be careful and make sure that you at the least have it linked with life gain on hit, and getting an early increased duration gem makes a big difference as well, and you should of course be somewhat tanky at this point to do that. When you start to use Vaal Cyclone effectively, that is when this build really starts to get funny. Trust me guys, you're in for a treat. Now the last thing we're going to talk about is what kind of affixes and stats you should aim for on your gear for your character to make it as powerful as possible. So let's quickly summarize what this build actually needs to function. We of course want life and resistances so that we don't die. That is pretty self-explanatory. And to further improve our survivability, we want as much armor or evasion on a gear. It doesn't matter which one, since we're using iron reflexes. And lastly, we want as much physical damage as possible to make sure that we're able to destroy our foes. You of course already know that being resistance capped when playing on merciless difficulty is mandatory, so I don't need to tell you that. Do I? No, I don't. Anyway, when you're resistance capped, this is the stats in priority you should aim for when changing gear. For defensive stats, you want life, armor or evasion, strength, as it will increase your life as well, and chaos resistance. And I should say that chaos resistance isn't too important, so don't use a lot of currency to try to get that. It should be considered as a nice bonus. That's it. For offensive stats, you want high physical damage. Can't stress this enough. Get that on your weapon. High physical damage and attack speed, flat physical damage and strength. And since you are using Resolute technique, there's really no point in trying to get critical chance or multiplier on your gear. The absolute most important piece of gear for this build is your two-handed sword. And I can't stress this enough, and I said it just 30 seconds ago, you should get as high physical damage as possible on your sword. Not elemental damage, as that won't multiply with your skill nodes. Get physical damage and get lots of it. And lots of swords have the additional bonus of having between 15 to 20% increased attack speed, and that is a great help as well. Try to aim for that. For this build you should also get 2 seething life flasks, 1 iron skin granite flask, a quicksilver flask, and either a ruby, topaz or sapphire flask depending on the content you're farming. Getting that 2% increased life leech on the elemental flasks is a great bonus as well, as you can pop that along with your granite flask when Vaal Cycloning to further improve your survivability by quite a great degree. If you want to invest some more currency into this build, I will in my forum post link to a few uniques and specific items that goes really well with this build. It is, however, not something we're going to discuss in this video. Oh, and for the bandit quest rewards, you should help Oak on all difficulties. So that's pretty straightforward, because you want the increased HP, the increased physical damage, and the extra endurance charge that he provides. And that's it, guys. Remember, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them below in the comments or by going to my forum post on the Path of Exile forums. I will make sure to answer any questions that haven't already been answered in this video. Thank you for watching, and bros, do you even nerd?